Bekee is a district ranger for the USDA Forest Service. She oversees the management of 216,000 acres of national forest system lands adjacent to the capital city of Salt Lake City, Utah. Her role as the Salt Lake District Ranger includes balancing the need to protect watersheds and those of the recreating public. Her district provides 60% of the culinary water to Salt Lake City, and it's her primary consideration when making decisions on the landscape. The Ranger District also has more than 6 million visitors per year. I may have gone up in this last year. It's primarily those visitations that we see in the Little Cottonwood, Big Cottonwood, and Mill Creek Canyons. Visitation occurs year-round, and visitors enjoy a multitude of recreational experiences such as downhill skiing, cross-country skiing, camping, mountain biking, hiking, rock climbing, horseback riding, wildflower and wildlife viewing, and motorized off-road recreation. In addition, the Wasatch Mountains bring in artists who capture nature's beauty in their preferred medium. Thank you for being here, Bekee. Our next panelist, Hope Braithwaite, is an assistant professor for watershed quality with Utah State University. She works with teachers, students, citizen scientists, the Utah Division of Water Quality, the Nature Conservancy, and others to provide water quality monitoring and educational opportunities statewide to increase awareness and promote stewardship of aquatic resources. Hope earned a BS in wildlife science and minors in fisheries science and environmental studies from Utah State University and an MS in environmental education from Southern Oregon University. She worked as a summer instructor at Teton Science School and as an outreach coordinator at the Ogden Nature Center. Hope is thrilled to be back with Utah State University, pursuing her passion in watershed quality and environmental education. Hope, thank you for being here. And finally, we have Stephanie Wacha. She's the education director for Friends of Cedar Mesa. Stephanie leads visitor education efforts in southeastern Utah in line with Friends of Cedar Mesa's mission to protect and build respect for the cultural and natural landscapes of the greater Bears Ears region. Her role as education director includes oversight and direction of the Bears Ears Education Center, the country's first and only visitor center for a national monument to be run by a conservation nonprofit, as well as partnering with land management agencies and tribes to educate the public about how to visit cultural landscapes responsibly through the multifaceted Visit with Respect education campaign. This remote, rugged country that is sacred to many indigenous cultures has been in the news quite a bit over the last few years, drawing a significant increase in visitation to the sensitive cultural landscape. Welcome, Stephanie. Welcome, all three of you. Thank you so much for being here to share this information today. So Bekee, I want to start with you. You're a district ranger, as I mentioned, and you've seen some human waste issues definitely firsthand. What has it been like this year compared to the more normal years of the past?
Yeah, I keep trying to think about what's normal because I've been ranger now for 5 years here, and every year we have something that's abnormal. Either we have higher fire frequencies or we have the mudslides that we had last year in the canyons, and this year just seems to be no different. You mentioned earlier that we had 10 million people on the forest. This year we're estimating about 13.5 million people on the forest as a whole, and then my district normally gets about half of the visitation, so probably about more than 6 million is, I'm going to stick with that. I don't want to overestimate. We definitely have seen a huge increase in people, though, with COVID. Since the beginning, everybody has been encouraged to go outside, and as a result, we've had that huge influx of people going outside and recreating and enjoying their public lands. One of the things that we've noticed, though, this year is how many people are new to recreating, or they're choosing different recreational sports. For instance, backcountry skiing. When the ski resorts closed down, a lot of people went out into the backcountry and started skiing, and they didn't necessarily have the skills or the training to do that safely. And then the other thing we noticed is camping. We have a concessionaire that runs our campgrounds. They did a survey this year of did a survey of the people camping, and they found that 54% of all people that were camping in our campgrounds had never camped before. So that's another huge influx of new users into the forest. And with those new users and changing how they're using the forests, we're noticing that people are experiencing Forest Service lands a little bit differently this year. There's more crowding. People's tempers are a little bit closer to the surface. It could be everything that's going on across the country with the pandemic, but they're not as nice. We've had employees yelled at this year. We've had people spit on. I mean, it's been pretty challenging for everybody that's been involved with working with public lands. And another thing that we've noticed is more trash on the landscape and definitely more human waste. When I look at the number of toilets I put out at different sites, the rule of thumb is for every 35 cars, we have 1 toilet seat. At some of our trailheads, we have 600 cars, and the trailheads were designed to have 70 cars. So we have 2 toilet seats for 600 cars. We should have 10 or 20 toilet seats for that number of cars. So it's been challenging to keep up with all of that. But one of the things that was really successful for us this year is all of the partnerships that we've had over the last several years. We've been working really hard with people like public utilities, Alta Ski Lift, Snowbird, the town of Alta, the town of Brighton, just recognizing that our restrooms are so critical here. So this year, when COVID hit and the CDC guidelines came out saying that we had to increase the frequency with which we cleaned our bathrooms, we really relied heavily on our partnerships, and everybody kicked in some extra money so that we were able to increase that frequency. Instead of just cleaning 3 times a week, we were able to clean every single day, which for us was phenomenal. And we just really want to thank our partners for helping us do that. The money that we are appropriated last year with 10 million visitors, it was about 4 inches of toilet paper per visitor. This year with 13.5 million visitors and flat budgets, you couldn't even get a square. You got 3 inches when you were out there. So our partnerships really helped us make sure that people could at least get a full square when they were there.
Thank you. I think that's one of the most realistic ways to think about it from a very personal perspective. If you don't even get a square of toilet paper before your hike, you need to, plan as we've been saying. I think I heard it from you first. Know before you go before you go too.
Right.
So in your bio, you mentioned that the watershed is your first consideration when managing the lands. So would you talk a little bit about this forest to faucet mindset that I've heard you speak about before?
Sure. So for those of you that live in Salt Lake County, you might have heard this before. And then even if you don't live in Salt Lake County, you might not know this because it doesn't seem to be advertised as much. Forest Service lands provide a lot of the culinary water for a lot of the local municipalities that are adjacent to that watershed. And for us, we provide about 60%, as you mentioned, of the water for the Salt Lake Valley. And so the water starts out at the town of Alta, town of Brighton. There's 7 watersheds that I have on my district here, but those are the 2 primary ones that I work with. Those 2 Brighton provides about 30% of the water, and then Alta provides about 14, 15% of that water. But the water will start at the headwaters. They go through the streams and the creeks to the treatment plants, which are at the mouths of the canyons, and it then enters the distribution lines. The treatment plants can filter and sanitize water for human consumption, but it takes less than 24 hours for water at the town of Alta or the town of Brighton to come out your faucet if you live in the valley. That is incredibly quick. So anything that happens in the forest comes out your faucet. So that's what we're talking about with the forest to faucet mentality. And you'll notice that especially in the canyons, Big and Little Cottonwood Canyon, there are special rules and regulations that apply, and that's because we want to make sure that that watershed is protected. So we have special restrictions concerning camping, swimming, domestic animals. And then if you've been up there any time that there has been unfortunately an accident where a vehicle goes into the creek, there is a really rapid emergency spill prevention plan that goes into place pretty quickly to help divert that water so it doesn't go into the treatment plant and then out our faucets at the end. So that's what we mean when we're talking about that.
Wonderful. Thank you. It also really puts it in perspective. What do you think are some ways, some effective ways to have less poop on our public lands? I know you mentioned partnerships, and that certainly helps with some of the bathroom issues. But what are some other effective ways to help mitigate this issue?
So I love the know before you go, and I love the messaging that we're going to hear in a little bit here about the go before you go. we know where you're going when you're going out there, know what amenities are available. If it's a vault toilet, what does that mean? If it's a flush system, what does that mean? Whose land are you going to be recreating on? Is it mixed ownership? In the canyons, we have a lot of mixed ownership, and people who own that private land don't necessarily want you going across their private land. So make sure you know where you're at. If you're starting a new sport, make sure that you have the training, the skills necessary to partake in that sport instead of just going out and trying out those brand new skis that you haven't used before. Again, I love that go before you go message, so I'm excited to learn more about that. And then we also promote pack it in, pack it out. It sounds odd when you're talking about human waste, but there are WAG bags available, and I believe that we'll be hearing about that in a little bit as well. So bring WAG bags. People pack their backpacks with water and snacks and sometimes sunscreen, but they don't always bring like emergency blankets or first aid kits or a WAG bag if that should happen. And then this is where I'm going to put something in the chat box about our website that has a lot of information. We partner with Tread Lightly, and Tread Lightly, they have, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be multitasking. Tread Lightly has some messaging and some videos about how do you go to the bathroom in the woods. And again, know before you go. The messaging that they have is dig a pit and bury your feces 6 inches under. Our soils up here are so incredibly hard. So even if you do bring one of those little hand trowels to dig a hole, it's really difficult to find a place that you can dig a hole like that. So really those WAG bags are probably the best way of making sure that you're protecting the watershed and other users that are out there.
Thank you. And you actually queued up a couple of the next questions really well. I do want to shout out quickly to Stephanie and Friends of Cedar Mesa. There's a video that the Friends of Cedar Mesa put out. I'll be sharing with anyone who's registered for this session. That's about WAG bags and this entire issue of human waste. But it really goes into the fact too that up here in the Wasatch Front we have really hard soil. But if you're in the desert, you may not even have soil. You might just be on slick rock or something like that. So that's something that we'll be talking about a little bit later. But you mentioned, of course, go before you go several times. So Hope, I want to turn some time over to you to talk about Gotta Go Utah, and perhaps some key takeaways our attendees can use as effective messaging tools. I did see a question come up in the chat. We will be getting to those toward the end, and thank you for adding those to the chat. So Hope, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me and having this conversation. I feel like I've been talking about human waste or poop a lot lately with people, and I think it's such an important conversation to have right now. I'm going to just present something real quick. All right, and then yell at me if you can't see that. Otherwise, I'll just keep going. But thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited to share with you about Gotta Go Utah. So this is our water quality outreach campaign about human waste on Utah's public lands. So we're basically trying to educate people that are recreating in Utah on what they should do when nature calls in the great outdoors. And to inform this outreach, we first reach out to land managers because they know the issue best. Like Bekee was saying, you really know what's happening on your land in your jurisdiction. And this was done in 2018. We reached out to about 33 different people, responded to us from different organizations like the Forest Service, BLM, state parks, and others. And so anyone that would answer a call or fill out an email questionnaire, we loved hearing from you. So if you on this call right now or any of those people, thank you so much for taking that time to share your experiences and concerns with us. This was really valuable for us to get a baseline to move forward on how we could help or what we could actually do. So we learned that concerns about management of human waste associated with recreation are widespread across public lands in Utah. 75% of our respondents said that human waste practices do pose a problem within their jurisdiction. And then those concerns really varied depending on the region. So if it was a forested area, or if it was an arid area, if it was slick rock, if there were cryptobiotic soils. So depending on what that environment looked like, and then also based on the type of recreational activity. So whether it's backpacking or RV camping, what you're actually doing out on the land. So it kind of looks different depending on that environment, and then also what recreational activity you're doing. So our goal is really to educate citizens on proper management of human waste when they're visiting Utah's public lands. And we're doing that by catching people's attention, and we're using humorous memes and other messaging tools on social media. So we have a Facebook and Instagram account, and then we're directing them to our website, which has a lot more information. It's still really friendly and easily accessible. There's accurate information, but it's really broken down into these very simple steps about what people should do. So that's sort of our approach, and how we're trying to reach a lot of different people with this. So this is our Facebook page. It's called Gotta Go Outdoors. And if you haven't checked it out, I would encourage you to do so. And please feel free to like it if you actually do like our content. We also have an Instagram account, which is Gotta Go Utah. And we post similar things on these two platforms, just tailoring it to whichever platform, if it's Instagram or Facebook. And I want to share one of our posts that I just cracked up. And I can say that these are funny, or I like these, because I didn't develop any of these. I'm the person that gets more bogged down in the details, and then we have amazing people that we've consulted with for marketing to be like, okay, but this is what we're trying to say. This is the science behind it. This is what we're trying to do. And then they come up with funny things like this. So explore like a cat and poop like a cat. So when you're in a forest, walk 70 steps from water. And we say 70 steps because we figured out that that's about 200 feet for people. And it's a little bit easier to know that. Okay, I'm going to walk 70 steps versus 200 feet. And then dig a kiddie hole, and then poop like a cat. And also covering and camouflaging your hole when you're finished. And then we also, here's just another example, and I guess I used forested examples. We have others for deserts and arid areas, but this one's a silly little song. So if you got to go in forested areas, dig a cat hole, and then you can sing this little song to row, row, row your boat 4 times. And then that's about the length that you need to walk before you dig your cat hole. And this got stuck in my head anytime I do a presentation with this, but I'll save you from hearing me try to sing, because I don't have a great singing voice. But we're just really trying to use these catchy little things on social media to really direct people to our website, where we have a lot more content about going in the great outdoors, especially in environments and recreational activities in Utah. So we've had a great response. Again, we did the survey, we got all of our information in 2018, in 2019, we developed these resources, and then we really launched it this summer in 2020. And so we've had a great response from BLM, Visit Utah, DWR. A lot of different places have been great in helping share our content and reaching more people, which is really, really helpful to get the word out there. And then it's been amazing to see. We'll learn about different Facebook groups or different groups like Uinta Lovers and Utah Backpacking. And we try and share our resources, but sometimes we'll go in and see, oh, someone else has already done that for us. And so it's wonderful if people that are leading a group, or your friend, or someone that you trust, instead of, okay, who's got to go, or who's Utah State University Water Quality Extension. It's a little bit more personal too if you get it from a friend. And so that's been great to have this really good response from all of our partners and collaborators and people we don't even directly know that are helping promote and share this resource. So again, these posts direct people to our website. And so I'm going to try and share the website now. We'll see if I can pull this off. And again, please, India, just yell at me if I'm not sharing the right thing. But but here's Gotta Go. This is our website. And again, we've tried to really break things down into simple steps, really easy to understand and to do for people. So we have know how to go. We've talked a lot about know before you go, and then be prepared. So if you do need to bring that WAG bag, if you need to bring anything with you, you know what you're doing and what you need to bring. And then also go before you go. And I think one thing that has been really challenging for me in this is I get really bogged down in the specifics of like, okay, but if you're in Little or Big Cottonwood Canyon, you should do X, Y, Z. If you're in this place, you should do that. And I was talking to people about, okay, we could have a flow chart of if you're here, you need to do this thing. If you're this, do this. If you're this far away from this thing. And all of the marketing people were like, no, Hope, that's not going to work. Like we can't do that. No one's going to follow your intense flow chart of what to do. So this is our very quick, and I really do love this, our very quick guide to going in nature. And so it's very basic. It's very simple. It doesn't incorporate every single scenario, but it's just a really nice basic guide for people to follow. So what to do in forested areas, so digging a cat hole, what that looks like. In a desert or alpine area, you really want to pack it out and what that kind of looks like too. And then we do have information about RV camping and dump stations, because that was another thing that we heard from a lot of land managers was issues with dump stations, with RVs, and getting people to know where they can dump their waste, and also knowing more about how that works and if there's free places, if they're seasonal, all of that kind of stuff too. So at that's our home page. And then we have each of them broken down so you can see forests. And I do want to mention that we give all the information about when and how, exactly what you need to do. But we also give the reason behind why. Why is it so important that you dig a cat hole or that you pack out your waste in these different environments? We use a lot of the Leave No Trace resources. These are some of their videos, and I really want to get the video that India and Stephanie had mentioned earlier on here too. I would love to see that. But videos on how to do those things and really the why behind it that's more Utah specific too. So then we have our desert and alpine area. Again, when to do it, how to do it, why, the reasoning behind why you need to pack out your waste in these areas, and then useful resources. So we're trying to make it really simple, really easy for people. We have this RV camping section, and we created this map too with RV dump stations. So if you're recreating in one area and you want to find the closest dump station, then you can use our map. It gives you exactly where it is, availability, hours, the price. Some of these are free. The red's open year round, and then the blue is seasonal. So you can kind of get an idea for that. And this was updated at the start of this year. And then we even had a few people, if you notice that there needs to be changes or there's a new dump station, please let us know. Every year we're going to update this map, but it always helps if there's other people that let us know early on too if there is a change. But we'll keep this map updated for people to use when they're RV camping. We do have a rules and regulations section. And so that's a little bit more with, again, RV, sewer systems, RV wastewater, and then public lands in general, pit toilets, that kind of thing too. And then, so those were all of our environments, really talking about what you need to do in these different environments. But then there's also a specific situations tab. And so this is kind of a catch-all for kind of the different recreational activities too. So we're getting into winter right now, and then there's climbing, paddle trips with group recreation. And then we also have some women specific resources. And so we really are just trying to have resources that are very clear and simple, really easy to understand so that people will know how to go or know what to do when they are recreating on our public lands.
Thank you so much, Hope. That's a very cool website, and it's neat to learn how much public input went into it from different agencies. I know during the summit, I heard from a lot of different people, from land managers to tourism managers and kind of everyone in between about, they were seeing people who may not have understood about dumping an RV, that you actually had to, you know, follow special protocols and go certain places, that they were just dumping it. And so it's great to know that that's there. And so kind of on that note, a question that just came in, is that map, the dump station map, is it open source?
Yeah, and so it's, I guess, we update it. So if you just put anything into that little box that's on our website, then we will update it. But it's just using Google Maps.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. And to everyone who's adding questions into the chat, thank you. I'm navigating between screens, so I'm trying to make sure I'm getting everything. I'm adding names to a bowl so that I can draw names at the end of folks who are asking questions. So Stephanie, I want to go ahead and turn the time over to you to a different messaging campaign, but about a very pretty much the same issue, just in some different landscapes. Would you tell us more about Friends of Cedar Mesa, about the Pack Out Your Poop campaign? And again, if you've found really effective messaging tools that attendees can take away to wherever they are, what are those messaging tools?
Sure, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. And thank you to the other panelists. I hope I look forward to sharing your resources as well. Pushing that out for our channels. Yeah, so Friends of Cedar Mesa is a conservation nonprofit based in southeastern Utah, and we work in the greater Bears Ears region. So the organization as a whole works on advocacy, stewardship, research, and obviously education. And we do that through a number of ways: the Bears Ears Education Center, as India mentioned, as well as a Visit with Respect ambassador program. So we have volunteers out on the land hiking. And then I saw this conversation kind of started in the chat, but engaging with visitors to try and help educate them and using the authority of the resource technique. And the Visit with Respect, that's kind of the core tenet of our education campaign. And it's to help uneducated but well-meaning visitors visit cultural landscapes respectfully. So the Greater Bears Ears region has over 100,000 cultural sites, and a lot of the visitors that we see really haven't visited these resources before, and so might behave in ways that damage them without intending to. And our newest principle is the Pack Out Your Poop principle. I'm actually going to screen share for just a moment. So we can have a visual here. And we have, actually, I'm going to do that in a minute. So yeah, so we've been, Friends of Cedar Mesa, just being the group that's kind of on the landscape, has been documenting a growing problem with human waste over the last few years. We're just seeing it more and more. And while we don't see the kind of numbers that you see in northern Utah and the Salt Lake area, we had 400,000 visitors in 2018. And that was to the reduced monument boundaries. So just that 15% of the original boundary. So that's still a vast area, but a lot of visitors. And that's been increasing the last couple of years. And to give folks an idea of the resources we have down in southeastern Utah, we have, at this point, I think we're working on, the BLM's working on getting another. We have one ranger for about 2 million acres. And as far as vault toilets go, when you're out on the land, we have maybe, I would say it's under 6 for a really pretty vast area. So we're nowhere near that 35 cars per toilet seat, which I love that statistic. Thank you for sharing that, Bekee. And this is gross, but I did the math. So of those 400,000 visitors in 2018, all right, the average 140-pound person produces about 14 ounces of poop daily. So if just 1 out of every 10 visitors leaves waste on the landscape, that's over 11 tons annually. So just kind of getting that bulk, so that's a scope of the problem. So in addition to volume, there are a couple issues that we're dealing with that are unique to an arid landscape, and in particular to Bears Ears. So since most of the traffic that we see is going to visit those cultural sites, that's where the waste is going to end up. And, you know, these sites are sacred to modern indigenous peoples. So leaving waste on that land, like in any archaeological area, is just extraordinarily disrespectful. But also our arid soils can't break that down. Like Hope was showing, like in the forest, it's okay to dig a cat hole, but in the desert, the soils can't break it down. And in the same way, or it's potential that you can't dig. You might be on slick rock or in a tight, narrow canyon where you can't go 70 paces from a water source. And so we're encouraging people to just have the standard be to pack it out. We've actually found, somebody was asking about education, about what happens to when people leave waste on the landscape. Things are preserved so well in this landscape that we've actually found coprolites, which are, it's the word for fossilized waste, that are 1,000 years old. So to think about your poop outliving you and, you know, the next X number of generations is kind of crazy. So that's one good reason to pack it out. So yeah, we're just trying to get the message out there. Our agency partners are hugely important. And you know, I find that we can kind of have the agility to do things. Like, we partnered with the BLM to get 3 porta potties out on Butler Wash, which is a heavily trafficked area in the region. We've been servicing those for the last 2 years. But a large part of what we do is the messaging. And so we partner with SITLA, the State Institutional Trust Land Administration, the BLM, and then potentially the Forest Service down in this region to, I'm going to present now, sorry. Again, multitasking. Here we go. And we find that consistency, can you see the pack out your poop icon? Okay, great. It shows that it's still trying to share on mine. The consistency of messaging across the landscape is really effective. So, you know, if somebody sees this icon and gets this message in one place, okay, that's one voice giving it. But once they start to see it across the agencies and across the landscape, it becomes a lot more effective, and it just starts to get ingrained. And so, you know, we really love the work of Tread Lightly, doing that, especially more focused to the automotive recreators. And yeah, we think it's a really effective way, and leave no trace. And so it's kind of along those lines. And we're fairly consistent across southeastern Utah and San Juan County, and increasing. I think next year we have a big push to get a lot of signs out. And then, as India and Hope have both mentioned, we have a new video that we just, I think the blog post is going out this morning, to share. And so you'll see that in your inbox in a couple days. Yeah, and so that's the work that we're doing. And these icons, if there is anybody that is interested in just a prepackaged icon ready to go, these are available to share as well.
Thank you so much. I did just watch that video yesterday evening, and I thought it was, not only was it educational, but it was actually really fun, which is, I think, kind of one of the main messages between all of these, between the poop fairy and the cat hole, cat adventure, but then also kind of this, I don't remember the exact term in the video, Stephanie, but it was something like influencer in quotes or something like that.
Yeah, we're trying to get our ED sponsored to be a wag bag expert.
Perfect. Well, I'll share that out with everybody. So I've got one final question that's kind of going to be a lightning round for all 3 of you, and then we are getting some really awesome questions in the chat. So we have got a variety of people who watch these webinars, whether they're live or whether they watch them on our YouTube after the fact. So this can be communication specialists, land managers, of course, health departments, retailers, or people who just enjoy recreating. Maybe it's some of those. Stephanie, I love what you said about the uneducated but well-meaning. That can be particularly with some of the folks who are brand new to recreation. How do we really get this message out? I think this is also something that Cody put in the chat. How can we effectively teach these newer recreators the why and the how? It's, I think that sometimes we may be preaching to the choir a little bit. So what are all of you doing to really get this out? Hope, I know you, of course, mentioned having other people share the message and things like that. And any of you can feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I think that's something that we're really trying to do right now, is just get a broad audience, just reach out to whoever we can, whether that's partners. But yeah, sometimes it does feel like, oh, we're all just reaching the same types of people that are already interested. And so really trying to reach those people. I know that moving forward for next year, at least with what we're doing, we really want to try and work with people at trailheads, at places where they're seeing these issues with land managers, to really get those signs and get some of those funny memes or graphics posted right at the trailhead or right at those areas too. So I think just meeting the people where they're at. So that could be social media for some people. Other people aren't going to ever look at social media, and so having it at the trailway or in a newspaper or in other ways is really important. So I think just a really diverse way of getting that information out, so that anyone that's looking for that is gonna find it one way or another.
Yeah, and to tack on to that, I think in addition to working with the agencies, I would be interested in working with retailers as well, right? To print out a little card, and we could assist in that of that icon, and people could just drop it in. If somebody buys a backpack, like drop it in the bag when they leave. To be trying to get, because that's probably gonna be a brand new recreator. And I think retailers could be a really important partner in education campaigns.
Yeah, and for me, I'm working a lot with partners and volunteer organizations. I have 23 volunteer organizations that I work with routinely throughout the year. And what I keep trying to talk about is trash begets trash, or the tragedy of commons. So if you're not familiar with that, people that have common land tend to treat it differently for their own interests instead of the interests of the whole. And so what that means for grazing, for instance, areas are overgrazed, and for what it means for trash and garbage and some of the human waste issues that we're seeing is people don't pick up after themselves. They don't want to bend over, pick up their garbage. They tend to leave it there. A couple comments about the dog waste bags being left on the side of the trail. Yes, we have that problem as well. I don't want to start having to pick up wag bags though, filled with human waste. That's a little bit different. But if we can somehow work with volunteers and partner groups to clean up trash as quickly as possible so that it doesn't start collecting. If you don't pick it up, then people just keep adding more and more trash to the same area. Graffiti is a great example. We have a couple of areas a couple of years ago that were really high density graffiti along the front here. I have a graffiti buster group now that goes out there almost on a daily basis and removes graffiti as soon as it's reported, because we're trying to maintain it looking like a natural system so that we don't have those problems. When the areas were graffiti ridden, you had human waste everywhere, you had hypodermic needles, you had broken bottles, so you just attract a much different user group. So for me, it's how can I work with people to help us maintain their public lands?
I will say we just barely had a statewide waterway and trails cleanup, and that event went really, really well, and we had a bunch of different sites. And one of our concerns was, oh, what if we have a group go to a site and they clean up and then another group comes the next day? And then we also had the conversation with a lot of people of there's going to be more trash. Like, it's just a constant problem, even though we're doing a week-long cleanup across the state. It's just a continuing problem. And so I think that's hugely important, is always making it look nice and not, oh, there's already trash here, so I'm just going to add to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think setting that standard is really important, letting people know that there's just an expectation that the landscape is going to be clean for the next user, because, yeah, once it starts to get trashed, then that becomes the expectation.
Great, thank you all. I've been going through the questions, trying to find the ones that haven't already been answered in the chat. So if I do miss that, I'm sorry, it might get answered twice. But thank you all so much for adding those questions. So this is from Nicole. What recommendations do you have for when you see others violating the rules? I found people get angry and defensive, and it can be scary to approach a stranger in these times. So that can go back to, do you approach a stranger, or what do you do, period?
So we actually deal with this quite a bit with our ambassador program and have some training around this, which I think is probably similar to some of the resources that the agencies use. But personal safety is always first. And I would say, if you have any doubts at all, if you're going to be safe, don't. But that being said, I think Bekee might have put this in the chat already. but you know, watching your body language, so having non-confrontational body language, going shoulder to shoulder and kind of going side by side is a nice approach, and having a friendly intro. Just maybe chatting about their day or where they're going or what they're doing, and then maybe kind of just like slipping in a suggestion for a behavior change, and why that's important. Offer a why as well. That's kind of some of the techniques we use. Bekee, I'd love to hear your input as well.
Yeah, we do quite a bit of training as well. Definitely want to go up with more of a friendly approach. And it depends on who you are and what the people are doing, right? If it's a safety concern, then we do come up a little bit stronger than if it's a dog in a watershed. We don't want to turn people off. And for those of you that don't live in Salt Lake County, or some of you that do live in Salt Lake County, we do not allow dogs in Big or Little Cottonwood Canyon because it is a protected watershed. And this year we had more than double dogs violations in the watershed than what we've ever had in the past. People don't seem to read signs, and what my law enforcement agent tells me is nobody goes up to the forest to read. So just, it gets frustrating, I think, for those of us that work in this constantly. This is the 200th person that we've talked to today about the exact same issue. Why aren't people reading signs? Just try and let that frustration go, because the person that you're talking to could be that 54% that's brand new to this. And the last thing that they want is to have any of that frustration come across and kind of turn them off from their public lands. They want to be out there. Connecting to nature is critical for people to maintain your sense of balance and your well-being. So we want to make sure that people continue to keep enjoying their outdoor lands. And then Kathy Donnell, and I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right, Kathy, you put out a great resource, The Authority of the Resource. And if you Google that, there's a whole bunch of YouTube videos that you can watch that helps train you and what you can say and start that conversation up.
Terrific, thank you. Hope, if you have anything to add, just feel free to unmute and I'll turn the time over. Okay. I saw a couple things that are sort of related about, we've got a NICA coach in the chat. I believe that was Cody. And then we have, sorry, I'm kind of just trying to scroll through everything. Nicole leads a Girl Scout troop. So first of all, thank you to everyone who's working on getting every kid outdoors and making sure that not only are they understanding how important these natural spaces are to everything that Bekee said, but also like learning a sense of stewardship along the way as well. So to that point, and to, I believe it was Kathy's point as well, how can I get these kids or perhaps other NICA coaches more involved with these organizations to become stewards and learn some of these lessons? What I'm going to be doing is I will create a Google Drive with graphics and messages that anyone wants to share regarding this, and we can pass it along. And then also I will put contact information for these organizations as well. And then if any of you, for example, Nicole, if you want to reach out to them, definitely feel free to. I'm sure this is something that they'd love to have Girl Scouts get involved with. I am still scrolling through. Thank you everyone for being patient. So this is an interesting question because Stephanie, I think it was you that mentioned that your poop could outlive you. So one of the questions from Emily, I think a lot of people feel justified leaving surfies because they have the false idea that poop decomposes quickly. So is there education being provided about what happens to poop when you go outside on the surface, in a cat hole, or just in general? And what does that look like?
I can talk for the canyons in a protected watershed. Human feces as well as dog feces, they contain bacteria that can actually make us sick. So that bacteria, as Stephanie mentioned, can live 1,000 years. We want to make sure that that bacteria doesn't get into your faucet at the other end. So making sure people and their dogs stay out of the watershed, use the bathroom facilities as much as possible. If they can't use the bathroom facilities, bring the wag bag, pack it in, pack it out type mentality. But it really is the bacteria in the poop that makes you sick. And so that's what we're trying to keep out of your watershed.
Thank you so much. I am sorry, I'm trying to scroll through these. Okay, Emily asks, have there also been considerations for remote groover boxes or compost buckets that can easily be transported on ATVs?
I'll jump in. Just we haven't, but I think that's such a great idea. We don't see as much ATV use in our area. It's mostly hiking, but just north of us in Moab is a huge area, and so that's a great idea. And I'm going to think about it. And thank you, Emily, for suggesting that.
Thank you. Jessica asks, and this is the type of question that comes up regardless of topic. Do any of the panelists have grant funding sources that will fund bathrooms or education campaigns? And before I open it up, I would like to give a little bit of a plug for the Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant. It is something that our office, it's a grant that we administer. While it doesn't fund solely bathrooms or solely, let's say, just signage, it does fund those things if it's part of a bigger part of an outdoor recreation infrastructure project. So if you're building a trailhead and you're also going to be putting in a bathroom and putting in a kiosk of how to go, that could be eligible for the Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant. Patrick or Tara, if you could put in a link to that in the chat, that would be very helpful. And then to the panelists, are you aware of other grants or funding resources like that?
Yeah, so the Gotta Go campaign is funded by a few different places, but the Division of Water Quality, they have money. There's money for projects, but then also for education and outreach with their non-point source pollution program. And so that's where some of the funding came from, is thanks to the Division of Water Quality for that part. And then, so I work with Utah State University Extension, and we also got a grant from Extension to do that too. So at least for this campaign, that's sort of where the money came from.
And then in the canyons, I have a couple of bigger proposals that are going through. One is for Big Cottonwood and Little Cottonwood. I mentioned before, we have 600 cars parking at some of our trailheads and we only have 2 seats. So I'm at least trying to update that bathroom infrastructure to at least double what it currently is. So I have put in a proposal through the Great American Outdoors Act, which was recently passed by Congress this year. And so far, the Cottonwood Canyons restroom site design, that is ranking pretty high across the nation. So if you want to write a letter to your congressman for support for that project, please do. That's where it's at right now. It's sitting on Congress for them to pass. And then we have a federal land access program grant that we are working with the county on submitting to federal highways. And that one also was shortlisted. So that's looking really good. And that would be looking at replacing bathrooms in Mill Creek Canyon. Mill Creek Canyon, we're looking at about a $30 million price tag on that. And then Big and Little Cottonwood Canyon, and I should say Mill Creek Canyon, that also includes the road as well. That's why it's so expensive. Big and Little Cottonwood Canyon, we're looking at about $20 million total there. But other partners that we work with, Salt Lake Public Utilities, they have replaced a number of our bathrooms in the canyons. They replaced 4 vault toilets and doubling their capacity. So they were just tremendously helpful with providing money for that. And then I'm looking through my list. Central Wasatch Commission has helped put in some money towards restroom cleaning. Salt Lake County Health Department provided about $300,000 a couple of years ago to replace the bathroom at Silver Lake Visitor Center. That one there used to have 4 stalls. That parking area, again, is about 70 people, but that area receives over 1,200 people per day. So 4 stalls just isn't enough. So Salt Lake County Health Department gave us money so that we could double the capacity at that site as well. But in terms of grants, I just feel like I'm always begging for money. I'm not, other than the outdoor recreation grant, that's the only formal one that I've been working with. Most of it are the municipalities that we've been working with to get the funding.
Terrific, thank you. Let's see. Again, I'm trying to make sure the questions in the chat haven't already been answered in the chat. So thank you. I saw Jacqueline put in a comment about some kind of program that rewards people for packing it out or otherwise properly disposing. And it looks like Bekee commented back that that's definitely a good thing to consider. I've seen a couple of those answers come back and forth. Emily, thank you for the comment about getting information and wag bags into checkout counters, camp stores, bike shops, climbing stores, etc. Again, for, you know, slipping it in the backpack type of thing. And then of course with e-commerce, how do we deal with, you know, just making sure that information goes out in the package type of thing. And then we did have a question come in from Jessica. Has anyone researched composting backcountry toilets? Otherwise, we've got some chatter going back and forth, but Hope, it looks like if you've got info.
I was just gonna say no, but that sounds awesome. I think that's something that could be a really great fit for here, but I don't have any other information about it.
Okay, great. Let's see, our wastewater treatment facilities, this is from Patrick Davis, our wastewater treatment facilities hosting tours of their facilities for schools and interested citizens. And you know, that may be something that's on hold right now, but is that otherwise happening?
I know it has historically. I know that I've worked with groups, and at least a couple of years ago it was happening along, I think, near Kaysville. There were different groups that were going up there, and then they'd also come and do some field trips at the Botanical Center. That's where I'm out of, is Davis County, and so I know about that. But I don't know of anything super recently. If other people have updates, let me know or let us know.
Okay, I'm just making sure I'm not missing anything. And if I did miss something, please email that outdoorteam@utah.gov and make sure I see your question. Thank you all so much for engaging in the chat and commenting back and forth and providing different resources and emails to get in touch and whatnot. That's very helpful. It makes these feel more like our breakfast networking events that we used to have and not just you know, an anonymous webinar. So I really appreciate that. I've been writing down names on Post-it notes in a bowl, because this is how I'm working from home, of people who've been asking questions. I was obviously, you know, if you asked a few questions, thank you, but I only wrote your name down once. So I'm going to randomly draw, and this is someone who we will send you a prize. It's very likely going to be something from a local outdoor company that we have in our office: water bottles, t-shirts, some bags, things like that, very cool things. So the winner of the prize is Jacqueline Grant. So Jacqueline, thank you so much for all your participation in the chat. If we do have any last minute questions, feel free to put them in there right now, but it does look like most of this chat right now is just folks connecting, so thank you again. I will be following up with everyone who is registered with a link to this recording, as well as information such as the video from Friends of Cedar Mesa and different graphics and whatnot in a Google Drive. Feel free to share that out with anyone who is interested. And then finally, if you have any questions, just to go ahead and respond to that email once you get it. I will be waiting just a little bit later in the week, as we're having another Summit Speaker Series tomorrow, and I will send all of the information on to everyone who participates. So Stephanie and Hope and Bekee, thank you so much. This has been very informative. And again, thank you to everyone who tuned in and got engaged in the chat box. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, India.
Thank you.
Thank you.